What was her daughter doing?
Okay, Mr. Chair, we're live.
Totally
We're good to go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October meeting of the New York State Joint Commission on Public Ethics. Behind attachment A, we need approval of the minutes from the last public session on September 12th. Any comment or question? I have a motion, please, to approve.
Moved. Commissioner Weissman.
Second.
Commissioner Sample.
Thank you. All in favor?
Okay. I just know you can repeat. New York City, Commissioner Yates is abstaining because he wasn't present.
Albany, Commissioner McAuliffe abstaining, otherwise unanimous.
We have 8. Okay. Item 3 on the agenda, report from staff.
Okay, well, the first matter on the agenda is the second quarter financial report. So we'll hear from our Director of Administration, Chief Boland.
Thank you, Monica. For the second quarter, for personal services, the Commission spent just over $1,036,000 for a year-to-date total of $2,250,000, or 48.7% of the budget. For non-personal services during the second quarter, the Commission spent just over $140,000. Year-to-date, $289,000, or 31% of our cash allowance. So overall, during the second quarter, the Commission spent $1,176,000 for a year-to-date total just over $2,540,000, or 45.9% of the budget. So we are within budget for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Any questions?
Quick one, do you expect to ramp up the NPS spending through the balance of the year? And if so, why?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Next, the budget request.
Sure. So as we discussed at the last meeting of the Commission, we anticipated, we received the call letter from the Department of Budget on October 5th. And as it has in the past, it is requested that we keep our financials tight to avoid increases for the state. And so in accordance with that request, on October 26th, at the deadline, we submitted the request on behalf of JCOPE and asked for the same appropriation as last year. But in addition to making that request, we did highlight that we have significant IT projects in development right now and ongoing IT needs, and that we do need funding for those projects, which include the financial disclosure statement application, which previously was rolled out but needs significant IT support, as well as the development of the new lobbying application, which Dr. Carol Quinn is going to speak about shortly. But we're in the process of developing and testing that application, a plan to roll it out in time for the effective date of the regulations. That's an ongoing project, and ITS needs financial resources to be able to finish that project as well as to continue to support JCOPE's needs going forward. So we made that clear in our request, and we said, however it's done, whether it's through an appropriation to ITS or appropriation to JCOPE, and if those appropriations aren't met, then we may need to revisit our request. So that was our budget request.
Any questions or comments?
Okay.
Okay. Next item, outreach update.
So we've had several different outreach events over the past month. On September 20th, we held a training on the new lobbying regulations in Albany. Approximately 200 people attended in person and another 400 by WebEx. We presented and highlighted the new concepts that are in the regulations and made sure that the community knows what to expect and tried to walk through the changes that they're going to see in the new regulations. It was really well received. We got a lot of feedback, a lot of questions. In light of the demand for it, we also plan to have, we had an additional training as part of our CLE program in October, which also was well attended. That was our second annual conference that we hosted with the Center for New York City Law at New York Law School was last Thursday. We had approximately 180 people there, and the focus this year was on lobbying regulation and the First Amendment. And so we had Professor Maggie McKinley from New Penn Law School and Professor Richard Buffot from Columbia Law School, and they spoke about the history and the nature of lobbying regulations. The second panel covered balancing regulation of lobbying and the First Amendment, and that panel included Arthur Eisenberg from the NYCLU, Debbie Greenberger from Emory Shelley, and Jeremy Creelan from Jenner & Block, and it was moderated by our Executive Director, Seth Agata. It led to an interesting discussion about how to regulate but keep in mind First Amendment protections. And finally, Deputy Director of Lobbying Carol Quinn provided, again, a training highlighting the significant changes in the new regulations. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on the CLE that was really interesting. People learned a lot. They were really receptive to the panel on the regulations and asked for more training, more opportunities to ask questions. And from that, I will turn it over to Carol to talk about the rollout of the lobbying application and planned trainings going forward.
Okay, so as Monica said, the new lobbying app is set to launch in conjunction with the new regs January 1st. It's going to begin with the 1920 biennial statement of registration. All filings for 2018 lobbying activity, which will be the November-December bi-monthly, and the second client semi-annual, that will be filed under the old system. So starting 2019 lobbying activities forward will be on the new system. Just yesterday, we sent out an e-blast explaining the first steps to get yourself ready, for filers to get ready to use the new system. It had an FAQ document in it. Pretty self-explanatory, but we sent that out yesterday to kind of get people ready. We anticipate the profiles being open middle of November. That's the first step to get into the system. And we anticipate that the statement of registrations for the next biennial will open up on December 3rd, again, for the 2019-20. In the meantime, we're going to be putting up how-to videos, WebEx trainings, very short, particular trainings on how to do each step along the way. We'll have guidance documents. We're going to update the lobbying guide. We anticipate all that being ready probably by mid-November or December. We'll probably do more trainings. We've been asked for more trainings, so we'll probably set those up for hopefully maybe smaller group trainings on the regs. And then the only thing I'll just add is for the application that, kind of just highlight a couple features of it. There's going to be more specificity on who's being targeted, who's being lobbied. There'll be drop-down lists within the application about who you're lobbying, specific names, specific committee names, which should be easier for the filer. And also, again, the application will give better information to the public. And then finally, we're hoping by May of 2019, we'll have in place much better search functions for the public to be able to search who's being lobbied, which senator's being lobbied on which bill, and it should be much more informative, and we're hoping that will be ready in May of 2019. That's pretty much it in a nutshell for now.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I should just add 2 upcoming outreach events. We're holding an ethics officer forum on November 14th, which will cover restrictions on state employees doing business with the state. And Executive Director Agata will be speaking at the State Bar Association on an event on December 4th in Albany on lobbying and the new regulations, among other topics related to JCO. Thank you.
Monica, how many ethics?
Behind attachment B.
Monica,
Go ahead.
How many ethics officers do we have committed?
To attend?
Yes.
I don't know offhand, but I could find out. But usually they're really well attended, and we have a large amount of ethics officers who participate.
Usually we get 50 to 60.
Okay. Behind attachment B is the 2019 proposed meeting schedule, January through June. Do we have to do anything with this?
No, we didn't receive any comments on the proposed schedule, so this will be the schedule, and it'll be posted on our website.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda behind attachment C, proposed legislative amendment.
So based on our discussions at the past couple of meetings, we prepared the legislative proposal, which is attached as Exhibit C to your materials. The purpose of this proposal was to provide the Commission with more discretion to make public announcements about certain investigative matters. We discussed this at the last meeting. Some commissioners had comments. As we discussed, we then posted it and solicited comments, and we have not received any additional comments. So this is the current form. If there's further discussion or comments, we could bring this back before the Commission at a more appropriate time, closer to session.
Anybody want to comment on this? Okay, so let's do that.
Okay.
Item 5, attachment D, proposed advisory opinion.
Do you want to come on? I'll start off with. You can have this book. As discussed at our last meeting, we distributed to the Commission and sought comments on a draft advisory opinion addressing common issues under the post-employment restrictions. We're talking about the 2-year bar and the lifetime bar that applies to state employees after they leave state service. We're presenting the draft for the Commission's consideration at this meeting, and from there I'll turn over to Deputy Director Michael Sands. He can, again, give a brief overview of the content of the advisory opinion, and then if there are any comments or questions.
So what we tried to do with this advisory opinion is to clarify the precedent that has developed since 1988 through the present, and how we will apply that precedent going forward when we consider issues regarding the post-employment restrictions, which, as I've noted in the past, constitutes the majority of inquiries that we receive on a daily basis here in the office. The 2 main points that we are looking to achieve with this opinion are to ensure that with respect to the 2-year bar, the types of activities that are prohibited by the 2-year bar are limited to activities that are intended to influence an official decision or action of the agency. So in other words, it won't be any communication that would be barred by the appeal or practice laws. It would be a communication that is intended in some way to influence an official action or decision, or to obtain information that would not be available to a member of the public. And with respect to the lifetime bar, we had encountered some issues with respect to applying the lifetime bar to what we call in the opinion projects. Projects constituting large, ongoing affairs, usually construction-type projects that have historically been deemed single transactions for lifetime bar purposes. And the outcome of that has been that people who work on a very large project, such as a construction project, find themselves lifetime barred after leaving state service, even though the activity they are looking to engage in post-state employment really isn't directly related to what they were doing as a state employee. It just happens to be related to the same project, which we have historically deemed a single transaction for lifetime bar purposes. And in reviewing this, we saw that it really wasn't entirely consistent with the precedent that has developed over time. The lifetime bar has been called an extraordinary restriction because it lasts for a lifetime. And the idea has always been to try to narrow the application of the lifetime bar so that it only applies to very specific acts. But as over time it started to apply to entire projects, we decided that we needed to narrow the scope of that and get back to the original precedent, which held that it needed to be applied very specifically and very narrowly. So instead of creating a new bright line rule here, we've developed a series of factors that should be considered going forward and determining whether a project should be considered a single transaction for lifetime bar purposes. And we believe that with this opinion, we'll have greater fairness both to the individuals who are seeking our guidance and also to the state itself, which is often looking for skilled people to come back to perform services, not necessarily as an employee of the state, but who are looking to come back and provide services that the state needs and won't be prohibited from doing so based on an overbroad interpretation of the statute. We believe that we are accomplishing the goals of the statute, the post-employment restrictions, without any overbreadth of their application. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just have a comment and a few suggestions. First off, as a former staff member who swam in the morass of the lifetime bar opinions for 3 years on a daily basis, I think this is an absolutely excellent piece of work and very much needed. So many thanks to Michael and whoever else helped you with this. It's a Herculean undertaking. I think it's an excellent piece of an excellent opinion. My one suggestion might be, it's not a substantive suggestion, but in that I think that some of the clarity that this opinion provides might be just a little lost in the structure. So, for instance, it seems to me on page 11 that for the 2-year bar, if you go to the second paragraph on page 11, the second sentence, going forward, is kind of the gravamen of how the commission is going to apply the appearance or practice clause, and then basically the first sentence of the third paragraph is as well. And I'm just wondering that maybe at the end of the opinion, or that there's a summary, so someone can look to the opinion and say, okay, what is the takeaway, rather than trying to pick and choose. There's a lot that could be potentially that one could potentially pick and choose here in arguing to the commission, or in trying to model one's behavior in accordance with the opinion. And so maybe something that just says, okay, flat out, consistent with this opinion, here's what we're doing going forward: backroom services, appearance practice, lifetime bar. The lifetime bar one's pretty clear. It's on, maybe that's a model for the other ones, but it's the paragraph immediately before the conclusion on page 17. And maybe doing something like that as a separate paragraph, bolded, or at the end, just so someone reading this document, especially if one wants to read it quickly and not go through all the many nuances that are here and historical explanations, someone can just get a takeaway quickly. That's all.
Yeah, we had tried to sort of bring it forward into the introduction, but it doesn't get into the sort of the details. So I think that's a good idea. And some of the other comments we got from ethics officers we talked to was to, again, that while it's important to go through the history and the analysis, but to really hone in on what the bottom line is. So doing a sort of restatement or just putting it into the conclusion would be a good idea.
Yeah, maybe in the conclusion is that's all you need. Even if it's a verbatim restatement of some of the stuff earlier.
Just so it's really easy for the people to get straight to the what they need to know.
Sure. Go ahead.
Are there any persons or categories of persons who are exempted from the 2-year bar or the lifetime bar?
Not pursuant to this opinion. You mean in general?
Joe, any examples?
Yes. I mean, there are carve-outs from the 2-year bar that are built into the statute. For example, there are some carve-outs for medical professionals to continue to see their patients and not be prohibited from doing so with the 2-year bar.
We carve out for veterinarians under certain circumstances. We carve out for
Is any of that set forth in the advisory opinion?
Well, we didn't set forth a summary of the entire statute.
I thought that there are exemptions. It might be helpful for those, especially for those who are exempt, because it seems to be pretty across the board when you read it.
We could add in a reference to the statutory sections about exemptions, even if it's just a footnote, so that, I mean, most ethics officers who are advising people are familiar with those exemptions, but since this is meant to be comprehensive, I think it's a good idea to just at least make a reference to the fact that there are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be good right up front, right at the beginning, cross-reference and say that this does not apply to a certain category. In particular, doesn't apply to legislative employees. It doesn't. It does to some extent, but it's contrary to different. And I think a casual reader of this would be confused and think that it does apply to legislators or legislative employees when it doesn't.
Right. The provisions that we're interpreting do not apply to the legislature that we're interpreting this advisory opinion. So, yes, I think we can make that clear.
And even there, there's a little confusion, which I'm not sure is resolved by this, and that is within the 2-year period, you can't receive compensation for rendering services in connection with the federal resolution. And I'm not sure whether that's in the section that defines rendering services is meant to help define rendering services in that capacity. The language is a little different, so I'm not sure that you meant that. But as a former legislative employee, I can tell you it's a little fuzzy.
Yeah, we absolutely were not intending to opine on 73.8.3. And so, you know, the Legislative Ethics Commission gives guidance on that provision, and and this advisory opinion was meant to really just clarify this commission's precedent under 73.8A 1 and 2. So I think to make it just very clear up front that we're not using 73.8.3 and that this opinion does not apply to the legislature.
Yeah, along these lines, there's also been some exceptions that have been created through advisory opinions too. Like I'm thinking of like the professors, right? Although maybe that's not appearance practice. That's not appearance practice, is it? Students. So maybe maybe just some language that says that the opinion is not intended to eliminate or alter any exception, statutory or otherwise, to the application of the lifetime bar. So, the application of the post-employment restrictions, something like that.
Really, your intent was to clarify, not to supersede any prior opinion.
Right.
Other questions or comments?
Commissioner
Yes,
McNamara.
Commissioner.
Well, I join in the assessment that this is very valuable guidance and compliment those responsible for it. My question also relates to the two statements that were previously referenced on page 11. End of the second paragraph, I note that the phrase attempting to substantively influence is used. And then in the next paragraph, the phrase intended to influence is used. And I'm just wondering if those two phrases have, in fact, the same meaning, despite the use of substantive in one and not in the other.
No, I don't think we meant any change in difference in meaning between the two. So I'll make sure that language matches up in each paragraph.
What will the final version sound like?
I think the final version will it'll either eliminate substantively or it'll add it in the second paragraph. If we want to decide that now, we can do that.
Yeah, I think we can do it.
I mean, we ought to with the substantively influence.
Maybe do we need the substantively? Well, are there what?
I mean, can you influence decision making in a way that's non-substantive? If it's not, then it's not really influencing.
That's true.
I think it's more of influencing a material decision. I think is what maybe a better solution to this is influencing a material decision, so that it's a decision that
That captures.
is more important than, you know, what date is a commission meeting going to be on, for example. So I think we could get rid of substantively influence and just consider whether we need to modify the nature of the decision. But that might be difficult. Maybe we don't need to do that, and that will just apply in practice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For the commissioners, do you prefer to see a new version of this in line with the comments made today by various commissioners, or are you content to vote to approve this subject to the changes being made that we've all discussed here? Does anybody have a preference? Go ahead.
I would move the latter.
The latter.
I think they're minor technical changes. We're talking about removing the word substantively and adding a footnote to clarify the limited scope. And with that, those two caveats, I would just move the proposal.
Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, can I have a motion?
That was the motion.
Okay. Second.
Commissioner Yates and Commissioner Jacobs.
All in favor?
New York City.
Albany's unanimous.
In Buffalo.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 6, do we have new and other business?
I don't know.
Anybody in Albany have any other newer or other business to raise?
We're good here.
Okay, then at this time, that concludes the public session. I need a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
McNamara.
Second. McNamara, thank you. All in favor?
New York City.
Albany and WebEx.
Okay, thank you.
Stand by. We're back in public.
Okay, thank you. In executive session, we discussed litigation matters, discussed compliance and enforcement in financial disclosure matters, commenced 6 substantial basis investigations, closed 4 matters, approved 2 settlement agreements, authorized steps in several investigative matters, and discussed several other investigative matters. This concludes the October meeting of the Joint Commission on Public Ethics. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Commissioner Weissman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Second. All in favor?
New York City.
It's unanimous in Albany.
Buffalo.
Okay, we are adjourned. See everyone next month. Thank you.